All right, shall we start? I think we can start. Amazing. Hi, I'm Tom, and I want to talk about software development teams. First, the obligatory information. My first C++ job was almost exactly 25 years ago. And most of my career I've been doing C++ in the Windows Kernel environment. For the last 9 years or so, I've been a team lead. 3 different companies, team sizes ranging from like 3 to 12 or 15. Most of this talk is going to be my experience, stuff that I learned during this time. Sorry. I also want to mention this talk is inspired very much by a talk that April Wenzel gave in last year's CppNorth about compassion in software development. I actually started writing notes for this talk like as I left her talk back then. So very much over adept for this. Very last thing, I'm just representing myself here. All opinions are my own unless otherwise stated. They are not certainly the opinions of any computer statistical model. And yeah, if I make a mistake, you just say I hallucinated. So let's start with one of these opinions that are not my own. This specific opinion actually written on a slide of its own between quotation marks. That must mean it's true, right? Like everything that's displayed like this is the absolute incontrovertible truth, at least for the rest of this talk. And this opinion says that the ends of software development is software developers. What do we mean by that? Software is ephemeral by nature. It goes away. We deprecate features, almost never really remove them. Sometimes we manage to do that. But we definitely change them. Requirements come and go, and then the opposite requirement comes in. Software that stagnates usually means that it's software that's not being used, right? So really, it's pretty rare to see code that sticks around for, I don't know, 5 years without being modified, right? It happens. It happened in some code bases I worked on. It's just the code that you're, kind of afraid to touch. But for the most part, most software is ephemeral. So when we develop software, what are we actually really building? What we're building is the developer. We're building the knowledge in a person's head about the problem, about the solution, about maybe the programming environment, the programming language. Maybe we learn new things as we're writing code. So when we build software, we're actually building this very hard to obtain knowledge. And if I'm assuming most of us here had this great experience of needing to dive into a really large code base that we've never seen before and having to work on it, fix a bug, add a feature, whatever. So we know how much this knowledge is worth and how much we're missing it when it's not there. So when you think about it like this, we should actually be speaking about developers more than we do about development, which CppNorth is actually really good at doing, which I love. So let's talk about developers instead of development. Let's talk about the best developers, the mythical 10x developers. This is one of my favorite concepts, and you'll see how whether or not I'm being sarcastic in a bit, but you can probably guess. So this concept of the 10x developer, as far as I could tell, first mentioned or first discovered in this article in Communications of the ACM from 1968. And it was really popularized in the mythical Men Month, which is a seminal book that everyone should have read. And if you haven't, then you should. If you did, you should read it again. And in it, what the study says and what Fred Brooks describes in the book the difference in performance in terms of writing code and debugging code between the worst performing software developer and the best performing software developer in this study was at least an order of magnitude. And I'm saying at least because for some tasks it was 25x. I think it was for debugging, I'm not sure. So the very best developers could do those tasks 25 times faster, which is crazy. And I mean, if you look at the title here, exploratory, experimental, like it doesn't seem like they're very confident, at least in my opinion. But actually, this has been studied since, and there were some questions raised about the methodology of like this specific study. But it has been reconfirmed over the years. It's real. It's a real thing. It's a real phenomenon. And what more is, just going by the number of studies that I found in some random Wikipedia article, it's clearly something we're very much interested in studying. It's clearly something we care about very much, this individual developer productivity. But this idea kind of goes beyond just academia and scientific studies. This notion of the 10x developer became kind of pervasive in our culture, in our industry. It's something it's very much in our, language. Even way back in 1983, there was this great article published called "Real Programmers Don't Use Pascal." It was written by Ed Post. And he has this list of what real programmers, which I guess is another name for 10x developers, what they use and what they don't use, what they work on, what they don't work on, and the real programmers don't work on these newfangled structured languages. They don't do structured programming. They don't use Pascal. They have to use specific editors, and they have to work on specific operating systems, and they're only allowed to work on problems of like earth-shattering importance. They don't work on the trivial stuff. And this is what you have to do to be a real programmer, a 10x developer. And then there was a rebuttal to it called The Story of Mel that was posted to Usenet way back when, both of these in 1983. And in The Story of Mel, they make the claim that the real programmers only work on machine language, and the real programmers actually use and I'm not kidding, the electromechanical properties of the memory system of the machine to achieve their goal. And if you read it, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, the link is in my presentation, and it's both of these articles are great. Like, you should read them. And then, of course, eventually this continuous discussion of what does a real programmer look like culminated in XKCD, of course, like everything else. And Randall Munroe demonstrated that real programmers use the delicate flaps of a butterfly's wing to program, or Emacs. That's the comics. And so this is like 1983 through 2000, but really these days it seems like we care about it even more. It's so present in the industry. We even came up with all these great new names for it, like the ninja, right? Or the wizard, the rock star, right? You see all these job posts. It seems like we're either, everyone is either looking to hire the 10x developers or looking to become a 10x developer. This is a DuckDuckGo search. Look at how many articles there are about, how can I become a 10x developer? And of course, we're still studying. We're still trying to, learn more about this idea of developer productivity. And this is like, I was able to randomly find the whole listicle of articles just in 2025, published about developer productivity. And there are whole business models around it. And this is a snapshot from a company whose business model is about measuring and improving developer productivity. This is how they make money. And I'm not going to name the company, but it's real. And of course, we have consultants. This is a very large consulting company that, again, I'm not going to name. It's taken from their website. And they will offer you models and methodologies and ways to measure and improve the productivity of your developers, and they will be happy to take your money to do it. So, you know what? I'm sold, right? I want to either hire or train one of these exalted beings, the 10x developer. And if I do end up hiring them, you know, it got me thinking, like, I probably want to make the most out of them, right? I don't want to be wasting their time. Because it's like in dog years, right? If I waste 6 minutes of the time of a 10x developer, it's like I wasted a whole hour of the time of a mere mortal, right? So I want to make sure I use their time really, really well. So I'm going to try to avoid like time-wasting activities to free them to, you know, develop code in the 10x manner for which they are known. So all of these things, you know, like reviewing the code of lesser programmers, or teaching others, or mentoring, or, you know, onboarding other people, pairing on a problem with someone who is not a 10x developer, thinking about how things can be done better, spending time doing that. I mean, they're already 10x. How much better can they get, right? Building relationship with other teams, with other specialties, you know, working with the product people, working with the business side, working with our customers. It's going to be a huge waste of time. Wait a second. Something's off, right? Like, I'm pretty sure at least some of these things are like good. Like, we probably want to be doing some of them. So what happened? We just saw all these scientific studies and everything, and we got all excited, and something's off. So really, and here's another absolute truth, right? It's right there between quotation marks. And it's the quote I really like. The unit of delivery is the team. We no longer, like these days, and certainly, like, this isn't really new, but certainly these days, the stuff we build, or at least any software that's, you know, serious scale and has any serious amount of like real end users, not toy programs, it's built by teams. It's too sophisticated. It's too complex. We need to deliver too fast. Most things aren't built by individuals. There are some interesting exceptions. There are some open source projects and such that are in fact delivered by individuals with a lot of end users. And I'm not gonna talk about those. But for the most part, the stuff we build is built by teams. And it's not just teams of developers. It's teams of people from, you know, myriad specialties in most companies, right? So they need to collaborate together to deliver software over like long periods of time. In fact, if we take the previous quote and then the previous quote, the team is the product. This is my absolute favorite quote from Jason Gorman, who's a great follow on your social media of choice, because he's very angry and bitter, and this is always like the greatest vibe to add to your timeline. He really is a great follow. He says the team is the product. What does this mean? That when we build software, what matters is the knowledge that remains within the team. The knowledge about the problem domain, the problem about the solution domain, yes, but also the knowledge that the team generates about how to work effectively with each other, how to do things well together. Who do I go to if I need this done? Who's the right person to go to? all these unofficial roles, the note taker, the one who asks the difficult questions, the class clown, the person who can relieve tension in the team. All of this stuff, it's all, all the stuff that we mean when you talk about organizational knowledge. That's the knowledge, that's what we're building when we're building software. If we think about a team that delivered, something, some major piece of software together, if I asked them to deliver the same thing again, like in a different programming language, like they have to rewrite the whole thing from scratch, it would probably be done, faster, right? Like much faster than when they did it the first time, even if it's a whole other language. Even if I asked them to write something different, a team that already learned how to work together well, they would probably be able to do it faster than they otherwise would be. And when it comes to researching team productivity, things are a little bleak. Not a whole lot of research there that I was able to find, and I'm happy to to be corrected on this if you got any pointers, because I did look. I couldn't find a lot. Google Trends seem to confirm that we're not as interested in team productivity. I didn't put a legend on this graph because I think you can probably guess which is which. Not a lot of interest in team productivity. There are some interesting exceptions. Scrum and Kanban are both agile methodologies that put teams very much at the heart of the methodology, and I know that Scrum in particular gets a bit of a bad rap these days, and it's an interesting conversation to have, but I think this fundamentally the concept of a team-focused agile methodology is a very sound idea. It's a very good thing to build on. Also, Google's Project Aristotle, which is a really great piece of research. It's Google going internally, comparing different development teams at Google, and trying to find what correlates with high team performance. So, Google being Google, it was incredibly data-driven. They had dozens of variables that they tried to find correlations with team performance. And they did, they found some very, very interesting, very enlightening results. It's publicly available. You can read the article online. But one thing that I do want to point out right now, they also discovered the variables that do not correlate with high team performance. And there's a bunch of them. One that they call out specifically is individual developer productivity. So Google says that individual developer productivity does not correlate with high team performance. I could probably finish the talk right now, but let's keep going. I'm gonna be referring to Project Aristotle throughout the talk because I think it's good data, it's good research. So let's, there's also a couple of books that are worth reading that have to do with teams. Let's all of us together take the road less traveled and look at team performance. I hope by now I at least convinced you that it matters, and that it matters more than whether any individual developer is 10x or 1x or whatever x. So here's another truth up there from Russell Aikoff, one of the pioneers of systems thinking. A system is never the sum of its parts. It's the product of their interaction. And what this tells us, there are two takeaways here. One is we should be focusing on interactions. We should not be focusing on individuals. And that's what matters. The other thing that I notice here is that a lot of mathy words, right? Sum and product. I know those words, right? So actually, there's an equation here. And I'm pretty sure I'm not being too literal, right? This is, okay, this tells me like the average age of the audience, right? If you do not recognize this reference, then come to me after and let's rectify it. So I want to talk about team interactions and how we can maximize the values of the team interaction. But first, what's a valuable interaction? What makes an interaction valuable? Like, okay, raise your hand if you have never, we're going to play never have I ever. Raise your hand if you have never been in a meeting and thought, this should have been an email, or this should have been a Slack message, or this should have been a Teams message, or this should have been nothing at all. Like, the maximum potential value from this meeting would have been if they had just left us alone. We have all, like, there are no hands coming up. Like, we are all agreeing that this is a shared experience for software developers. So what made that meeting so low value that it would have been better? Like actually, some of those meetings have negative values, right? Like, it would have been better if they did not take place at all. What makes this interaction, this meeting, valuable or not valuable? And I submit that valuable interactions are those that build the kind of knowledge that we talked about before, about the problem domain, the solution domain, or information about how the team can work together, how the team can be better as a team. And that's what I mean when I talk about the valuable interaction, the value of individual interactions. There's a small caveat here, which is for the team members to see such interactions as valuable, they need to care about how well the team is doing. Like, if I'm part of the team and I don't care if we deliver or not, then there's no value in anything for me, right? The only value there is is someone tell me, go home, the workday is done. So we're going to touch on that in a bit. So we want to maximize this mathematical product here, maximize the value of interactions. And we can do it in two ways, right? We can increase the number of interactions, like the N here, or we can increase the value of individual interactions. And let's explore both options. So first, how can I increase the number of interactions in the team? How can I get the team members to talk to each other more in a way that generates this relevant knowledge that we want so much? Easiest way, get them to want to talk to each other. They'll figure it out. They will come out with new and exciting ways to communicate. In order for that to happen, interactions need to be minimal friction, or there needs to be like as little friction as possible. It needs to be easy to interact. In practice, this means no one should ever be afraid of asking a question or to announce that they failed. I'm not saying like say that they failed, like announce it. Or really to start any kind of conversation with anyone, right? The fear should not be a part of the team. Team members should be feeling safe. And this kind of connects to the notion of psychological safety that is, fairly, trendy these days, and I think for a good reason. Google's Project Aristotle actually called it out explicitly as something that correlates with high team performance, is psychological safety. So it's probably true. But I can reframe this, I can express this in a different way and say, we should ensure that team members are always compassionate towards each other, in the sense that April Wenzel described in her talk last year. And I prefer this phrasing because it's active. It puts the onus on the people doing things. It is your responsibility to be compassionate. It is not someone else's responsibility to not be afraid to do whatever. I think that's a better way to look at it, because it's more actionable. So compassion and these other, so-called soft skills, and again, April Wenzel called them catalytic skills, which for me was like a light bulb moment, because yes, this is why they are catalytic, because they generate this interaction, this communication in the team in a way that the more communication happens, the more it's likely to happen in the future. Because the interaction is frictionless and is good, is enjoyable. So it's a way where, the more you build relationships, the stronger those relationships become. And this is what we mean when we say catalytic, right? There also needs to be trust, because if I don't trust the business goals that I'm given, I don't think they're real. I don't think they mean them, or that they're actually valuable. If I am afraid that I might be fired at any moment with no notice, if I feel like my manager only pretends to listen to me and doesn't actually care about what I say, or any of the other myriad ways in which trust can be violated, it's very easy to break trust, unfortunately. Then the expected value for a lot of interactions becomes zero. Like, I'm just not gonna bother, because it's meaningless. So this trust is just this fundamental requirement for a high-performing team. And again, in Project Aristotle, they talk about dependability, where people commit to something, and you can trust them that they will accomplish what they say they will. That's part of trust. It's an important part. But it's also about open, transparent, honest communication. It's about vulnerability. And this is such a powerful word in the context of relationships in general, but also of developer teams. And this honest and vulnerable communication, both from peers, from team members, also from the managers, from those who set the goals for them, that is an absolute requirement. Finally, the team needs to care about accomplishing whatever it is that we want them to accomplish, right? Otherwise, there's no value in anything. They're just not going to see the value. Now, motivation is something that's been studied a whole bunch, more than developer productivity. There are books about it and studies about it, and I invite you all to read them. I want to focus on two aspects of motivation. One, there's a motivational model that I like. It's called MAP. It stands for mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Okay, and the model claims that this is what people need in order to be motivated, to want to accomplish something. Now, if I look at this model, then I say, if I want motivated team members, then this is what I need to provide for them, right? The team needs to provide mastery, or at least they need to feel like the other team members are helping them achieve mastery by teaching them, by mentoring them, sometimes just by having them do this work, right? They feel like the work is challenging enough that it's helping them improve. They need to feel like they have autonomy. If I'm talking about interactions, the team needs to design its own interactions. It needs to be empowered to decide when do we meet, what matters to us, what do we talk about, how do we communicate, how frequently. And of course, this will make them more interested in having those interactions, right? And finally, purpose. I'm going to talk about purpose in the next slide. Now, I said I want to talk about two aspects of motivation. One of them was the MAP model, which I think is important, and the other is, this is going to sound so obvious, right? A team is composed of people. That's axiom one, right? People are different, and they don't all respond to the same. They're not all motivated by the same thing, right? Some people sometimes like to pretend like everyone's motivated purely by money. And so, that's like I pay someone more, they will work harder or whatever. In my experience, such as it is, it's very, very rarely true. I won't say it's, an absolute lie, but I found it rarely happens. So treating team members like these fungible resources. Anyone ever got referred to as a resource? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nods, right? A lot of, like, you know what I'm talking about. I'm stating it right here. If you ever refer to a human being as a resource, you're a bad leader and you should feel bad. But I digress. But I wanted to put it out there. Okay, so we talked about how we can increase the number of interactions, the amount the team communicates. Let's talk about how we can increase the value of those individual interactions. One way to do it is make all communication relatable or important to every team member by them all sharing the same goal. If everyone wants to accomplish the same thing, they're going to care about, how are we progressing on the thing that we all need to accomplish, right? And the more specific the goal is to the team, the more immediate and measurable it is, the more concrete it's going to feel, and the more it's going to help us build a team, as opposed to a bunch of individuals doing stuff. The more, vague or grandiose or like over the horizon, this is what we're going to accomplish 5 years from now, that's not a motivational goal. That's not a goal that's going to help us, so it's going to help team members relate to each other or care about, what other people are doing. But if there's a concrete, specific goal that everyone's committed to, then even if you think about, the most boring meeting I can imagine, which is the status update meeting. I dislike them intensely. If everyone is trying to accomplish the same thing, let's say, I'll talk about that example in a bit, but everyone's trying to accomplish the same thing, they're going to care about the status updates of other people. Please care more about it. Because it affects me, right? I need to get this thing done, so I want to know how Michelle did, in like how well she's doing in her part, right? This goes also for, somebody is asking for help. If I share their goal, I am more likely to try and help them. Somebody is asking for a code review or to pair on something. All those, time-wasting things we talked about before, right? This is, Scrum sort of addresses this. They recommend having a goal per sprint. So it's like, every 2 weeks we have if the goal is, for a 2-week period, it has to be very specific, very immediate. In Project Aristotle, they actually refer to it multiple times. They talk about structure and clarity, and they do refer to goals there. They also talk about having a meaning for the work and having a clear impact for the team, which also relates to this. So clearly this is important, just having a shared goal for the team. Another way to increase the value, the perceived value of those interactions is making sure everyone speaks the same language. And by language, I mean technical language. If I'm a Windows Kernel guy, I live in kernel mode, I write C++, and maybe I'm in a team with a front-end person. And, these days I understand the Windows 11 start menu is a React app. That's what I'm told. There's some sniggering in the crowd. So it's not like impossible to see a kernel person and a front-end person who codes in JavaScript or TypeScript being in the same status meeting. Like, this is actually a thing that might happen. But I'm a kernel guy. I don't know of all this front-end stuff, right? This is why I am doing kernel. So that front-end person, they're going to be telling me, what they're working on and what they're doing and what's blocking them, the stuff they're stuck on, and they can't get this thing to run fast enough. And I'm going to be zoning out, right? I will not be hearing a word because it's JavaScript, and that's scary. But actually, maybe I could have helped. Or at least maybe I could have asked a question that would have helped. So there is this notion of T-shaped developers that are very specialized in one thing that the team works on, but they also have this shallow understanding of all the other specialties in the team. Enough to speak the language, enough to ask the question, enough to care a little bit. And that would change the whole interaction, right? Because now, okay, they're talking JavaScript. Wait, I know that, right? And like in Jurassic Park, right? This is Unix, I know that. This is JavaScript, I know that. Okay, so we don't know Spaceballs, we do know Jurassic Park. Okay, that helps me narrow it down. So having those T-shaped developers turns interactions into like more valuable interactions. Not repeating stuff we already know. If there is let's say there's a problem, there's a crisis, there's a challenge, HR speak. And the team is starting to talk about, what can we do? And everyone is saying the same thing. After, the first, second, third person, if I'm a slow learner, I'm again, zoning out. It's like, yeah, I heard you already. For the team, to not repeat itself, the perspectives need to be diverse. People need to approach problems from different perspectives, different directions. And the easiest way to do that is to ensure that the team is composed of people with different life experiences, different level of professional experience, different points of view, right? Different personalities, different value systems. The easiest way to get that is to just hire like varied people. And the just there is doing a lot of work. But it really is the easiest way. It's not easy, but it's the easiest. So, even if I don't care about all this, morality stuff and what's fair and all that stuff, I just want to make money, right? I'm the evil team lead, that's what I do. Okay, I still need to care about having diverse perspectives in my team. Monocultures are fragile. And I stand behind this sentence. Monocultures are fragile. When things are going great, they're going great. And everybody can, tap each other on the shoulder and be happy and look at how great we're doing. When you hit a crisis, when something really bad happens, monoculture breaks down. Either everyone has the same answer and it's right, or more likely, everyone has the same answer and it's wrong. And they have no idea they don't have a plan B. Monocultures they lead to inefficient teams and they break down. Because I have never had a week without a crisis in my professional life. I don't know, maybe I just have bad luck. But it's always something. Finally, most people's favorite subject to talk about is themselves. I know I like talking about myself. Discussing the team itself is a great way to generate this knowledge we talked about, and we call it continuous improvement. I had an interesting discussion with someone on my team who said it should be continual improvement, if you open the actual dictionary. Either way, right? Talking about how the team itself can work better together. That's one of the most valuable things you can do, and if the team cares about themselves, which they likely are, they will see it as a valuable interaction. Unless this kind of interaction is super valuable, but it's also the most vulnerable to lack of trust. If there is no trust, if I don't believe that change is possible, this whole thing becomes a waste of time. Should have been an email. And it's so easy to lose this trust, this belief that the team can change. Finally, either the most valuable interaction you're ever going to have or the least valuable one is failure, when the team fails. If there's a team with a very clear stated goal, great trust among themselves, feeling very safe with each other, have a compassionate communication style, and they also trust the person who gave them that goal, and they fail to reach that goal. In my head, what happens? They announce it early and loud, and they stop and they start talking about why did we fail? How can we do better next time? And out of this, miracles happen. And I'm not even exaggerating. If, on the other hand, there's a team where the goal maybe isn't as clear, and they occasionally snip at each other, or are impatient with each other, or think the other person is not the 10x developer they are. And they don't trust their management structure and how they will respond to failure. And that team fails. It's going to look bad. And unfortunately, I've been there too. It's going to look really bad for the team. So this situation of failure can be so valuable or so devastating, depending on how high performing the team is, which is, I guess, a case of the rich getting richer. Okay, so I hope I convinced you that team performance, team interactions matter. But before I talked about this 10x developer, and I was maybe a little bit sarcastic about it, maybe tore it down a bit. So it's only fair we do it the other way around. Okay, I convince you that team performance matters. Let's talk about how it clashes with individual performance, and I want to explore that through the notion of flow. If you're not familiar with it, it's a psychological state of deep concentration in which we do deep work. Something that's been studied. And I think it kind of epitomizes the individual focused way of looking at productivity. It's achieving the state of flow and staying there for as long as possible. So, first thing, flow is real. It's been studied. At least according to Wikipedia, it's my source. What am I going to do? Ask ChatGPT? So it is a real state that allows us to produce meaningful, deep results. But more than that, for some of us, maybe for a lot of us, flow is the reason we're still doing this thing. Like, let's face it, right? Software engineering can be a teeny bit frustrating at times. like occasionally. And for some of us, this is the real reward, is this possibility of achieving the state of flow and staying there for a bit. Honestly, it is for me. So how can I achieve this state of flow and stay there if I have to do all this communicating all the time? I have to do all these interactions, right? It's a contradiction. And it is. But we're engineers. And engineering is the art of the trade-off, and we need to find a trade-off. I'm not going to pretend like individual work is, valueless, and we should all spend all of our time sitting in retrospectives, right? That would be ridiculous. But I am saying that it's important to understand the value of team interactions and kind of balance it against this idea of flow. And then maybe I schedule some time, for deep work. Maybe I figure out with the team, how can we ensure that all the team members have the time that they need to concentrate on the thing that they're doing, and we decide on slack off time. But we need to remember, the longer I am in a state of flow, the more out of sync I get with the team. And that's the trade-off we're making. And as long as we're aware of it and we're making that trade-off explicitly, we're probably good. So I present to you my counterpoint to the 10x developer, the 10x team member. What can I do to be a 10x team member? I didn't search, but I'm guessing not a lot of results for that on DuckDuckGo. First and foremost, for me, remember Ash's conformity experiment. It's actually a series of experiments. Solomon Ash took 8 participants, showed them this line and this card, and asked them which of the 3 lines is the same length as the first one. Okay? I hope that's clear. And what he did was 7 of the 8 participants were actors. They were in on it. And then he went around the table and he asked the people one by one to say out loud A, B, or C. And the 7 participants intentionally gave the wrong answer. Now, this is clearly an easy answer. And he actually had a control group, and it's like less than 1% got it wrong, and I'm not sure how even that happened. But it is because I want to make sure I get the numbers right. The subject, the actual real subject of the experiment was always the last to be asked for their answer. Only a quarter of participants ended up going consistently against the opinion of the group. And this is like the most obvious thing you can do, right? Only a quarter of participants. Conformity is so strong. And then he did another thing. He had 1 actor give the right answer out of 8. Sorry, out of 7 actors, right? So now 1 of them gives the right answer. And then 95% of participants went against the majority opinion. And you can read up with this. It's fascinating. The group size doesn't really matter beyond 3. Like for groups 3 or larger, this holds. Incidentally, that's also the group size for a software development team, right? There's a correlation there. There is this disproportionate impact for one person doing the right thing. And this is research. I'm idealistic. I think it's true. I thought it was true before I knew of this experiment. So, but hey, science, right? But also, there's this disproportionate impact of one person doing the wrong thing. For being a 10x team member, that's rule one. What I do matters so much. And junior, senior, team lead, architect, whatever, right? You're a person in a group of people. And this holds. That's, if you take away one thing from this talk, let it be this. But take away some other stuff as well. So, care about the other team members. Reach out to them. Offer help. Encourage them. Be happy for them. Celebrate their successes when they accomplish something. Be compassionate. Okay, I keep going back to that term. And I said that talk by April once already had an impact on me. You know, how to change the world, right? Care about the team as a whole. Keep asking, how can I do better? How can we do better? And you got to kind of rise above your own cynicism to do that, which I sometimes have trouble with. But I think it's really important. Also care about the people stuff. Like, managers deal with people, engineers deal with software. That's the death of the team. Again, I don't think it's much of an exaggeration. And kind of be the change you want to see. So, the team is not learning enough. Hey, I'm doing a lunch and learn. I'm going to be watching a video, once a month. I'm doing it for myself, but, anyone want to watch together? There's not enough communication. Okay, I'm going to open this audio room on Slack for the next 2 hours, and anyone can drop in. I'm here. Team is not supportive enough. Celebrate successes. Be that person, the corny person who is, sending all those weird emojis and GIFs and, excessively celebrates things. Most importantly, don't wait for your manager to tell you to do that, right? And we had this expectantly amazing talk by Kate Gregory talking about how to drive change. That's, you don't need me to tell you anything, right? Be trustworthy. We talked about the importance of trust, right? Be the first to call out when things are getting off track. Generate a reputation of someone who gives realistic estimates, who cares about engineering practices over career considerations. And you know what? I think we all know in our environment who those people are. Become a better, again, time waster, right? All those things that waste time. There are a lot of resources out there on how to be a better teacher and coach and mentor. Use them. It's also, in my experience as a hiring manager, it's such a career booster to be able to talk about when you mentored, when you coached, when you taught something. Learn how to be a better learner. Learn how to learn. The first step in learning is not knowing. So come humble, right? And it doesn't matter, again, title or whatever. Just understand that you don't know. And set a good example. Like, if you're new to the team, asking questions is kind of expected. It's obvious. But there is, I wish I remembered who told me this. When someone joins the team and everyone tells them, ask stupid questions. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions, right? Well, I wish I remembered who said that. Unless the senior people ask stupid questions themselves, that person is not going to do it. Because they're trying to behave like the senior people. So ask stupid questions. Be a better code reviewer. Code review is an art and a gift and an opportunity to build relationships and an opportunity to be a teacher, and also time-consuming and difficult and tedious and prone to conflict. And how well we deal with conflict is a very individual thing, and it's a cultural thing, and it's complicated. In a way, code reviews are kind of a microcosm of everything we talked about, right? So there are many resources out there. Use them and become a better code reviewer. Finally, try to, in your own way, in your own ability, try to push towards the whole, like everyone else, being team first. Again, we now know how to do it because we had a great keynote yesterday. Okay, but what if I'm a manager? First and foremost, have a common goal for the team. We talked about the importance of this on kind of several occasions. Empower the team. We talked about autonomy. Give the team as much flexibility as they can in establishing their own ways of working. But make sure they're aware of the different possibilities. Some teams I worked with, they didn't even know it was possible to work in a team-first mode. So educate. But also, if you see that the team leans towards this individual work, individual way of working, start asking why. Maybe there's lack of trust. Maybe there's a problematic incentive structure. People are getting rewarded for the wrong thing. Maybe there's no slack time to deal with changes. Not the free time. When people are stressed to 100%, they're not going to have the energy to change anything. Maybe there are project managers who play, people Tetris, trying to fit people's times to, 100% utilization, right? Wrong. And as a manager, it's your job, as a team lead, it's your job to mitigate these issues. You need to both empower your team and sometimes to protect the team from those who seek to take away power from them. Facilitate those interactions we talked about, those communication. You can think of facilitation as interaction design. Kind of lead the team towards a more team-oriented ways. Direct them towards a certain mode of communication that you think is more effective. And establish organization culture. I put this in quote here, not because it's the truth. I put it in quote because I really don't like this term, organizational culture. I think organizational culture is what we call reward structure when we don't want to make hard decisions. Okay? Establish who gets rewarded and what gets rewarded, and who gets the negative reinforcement and what gets the negative reinforcement and when. And for that, you need to be very clear, with yourself as a manager, with your team, about what it is that you want to accomplish. And then see how you can set up this reward and, punishment or negative reinforcement structure to accomplish that. And sometimes it's going to go against the incentive structure of the rest of the company. And that's fine. Be subversive. It's important. I honestly think subversion is an important trait in a team lead. I think it's something that needs to be cultivated. And finally, again, be a change agent. And if, make the change in your team and then make the change in your organization. Takeaways. First of all, teams should never be ephemeral. We talked about all this knowledge that accumulates as the team works together. If we're building teams per project and then kind of disassembling them, we just wasted all this knowledge. It just goes away. And then some other composition, some other team will need to start from scratch, which is kind of silly. Individual productivity doesn't matter as much as it's hyped up to be. A team that's only the sum of its parts is a pretty inefficient team. But also, all those working from home versus working, return to office, and using LLMs versus not using LLMs, don't use LLMs. Those arguments, to me, they're mostly pointless because they're asking the wrong question. Am I more productive at home versus am I more productive in the office? Who cares? You're not delivering software alone. Am I more productive using generated code versus without? Who cares? Is the team more productive in the long run? And honestly, I don't know of research on that. But I just think the question should be about teams rather than individuals. And finally, the notion of the 10x developer is actually harmful. Because it's, first of all, egos hurt teams, and what matters is the teams. So it's harmful for that reason, but it's also harmful because it emphasizes the wrong skill set. And then the people with the wrong skill set are getting celebrated and hired, and the people who could actually help you accomplish more are getting pushed out because they don't think they have the right skill set. They don't think they are, those superstars, those ninjas, those rock stars. And I have no doubt, I'm not even going to ask, every one of us knows of someone without whom the team's productivity would fall apart. And they're not necessarily the best or the fastest coder. With that, 10x thank yous. I don't know if we have time for questions because they raised the sign with the 10 minutes and they put a hand on the 1. Okay, I'm going to be here.
Do you have any resources or anecdotes from your experience where you found yourself in a dysfunctional team or a 1x team, and then that team was made into a 10x one?
I do, but this is going on YouTube.
Any resources? Well, maybe there are some written accounts of these things, so that maybe that could be shared along with your... Because I think stories about this would be more useful than seeing the individual ideas make a lot of sense, but putting them together is the hard part.
I absolutely agree. Having specific examples would mean a lot. I have 2 specific examples in mind, but... Okay, so there is one team that I built from scratch where I kept complaining about our lack of continuous integration. I'm not gonna say which company or whatever. I was already a team lead by then, and I complained enough that eventually my boss, director level, was, okay, go build a team, And I hired people, specifically for team-oriented skills, because that team's mission statement was incredibly varied and diverse. It was like there was no one technical skill set that would cover the whole thing. And that team was so successful that it grew from 3 to 7 people within a year, in a time when the company didn't have a whole lot of budget for hiring. And it worked in a very team-oriented way from day one, in an environment that was very much not team-oriented. And you know how it is, right? Like you complain about something a lot, and eventually they let you do it, and then it succeeds, and then your boss takes credit for it, right? Which is fine. So that that ended up being what happened, right? Like he went and was like, "Look at our great continuous integration team, such a great initiative," and so on. So we kind of really took pride in that, which is awesome. So that's one example that I have in mind. And again, I'm sorry, I can't give you, maybe come to me after.
I know. I'll ask my other questions off the record.
Thanks for the great talk. You said quickly that you didn't like also daily stand-up scrums. Do you have ways to make them more engaging or better?
I love daily stand-ups. I'm sorry if that came across that I was wrong. I definitely love daily stand-up. With a caveat that you need to constantly be monitoring for how much people are engaged, right? Now, the thing I really love about Scrum, when I was a Scrum Master, is you don't need to make any decisions, because whatever is going wrong, you just ask the team, right? So if there is, you just need to notice things. It's like Seinfeld, right? You just observe things. So you would go, like I would go into retro and say, hey, over the last sprint, like I felt people were not really engaged with the daily stand-up. What's up? And I'll get some answers. And more often, actually, those things that I thought only I noticed and was ready to talk about in retrospective, the team would bring them up before I had a chance to. Like in the majority of cases. I hope I answered your question. All right, I think, one more question. Amazing.
Hi, so you talked about addressing people as resources. So if a new team is being formed and we don't know who the members would be, so is it okay to address the count as resources?
Look, I'm not, I'm not making the rules. I'm not going to come to your workplace and, punish you for. I think it's better for everyone if we use accurate language. Accurate language recognizes that people are different, have different skills, and so on. So I can talk about staffing. I can talk about engineers. I can even talk about headcounts, which is a little dehumanizing as well. Use the language that works for you. At the end of the day, again, I'm not giving out fines for, bad language use. But in my team, it is well known that, when they want to make me angry, they talk about resources, then I get angry, and then everyone has a good laugh. Sorry.
Hey, have you encountered like a size after which like the T becomes like, too can't be wide enough to do a split, and then people just stop listening because there's 25 people doing the stand-ups, and when 5 artists one by one talk about whatever they do, the programmers are just looking at their phones or something like that?
Great question. There is research around optimal team size for people, like for humans. And I think it's around 12 or like 10 plus or minus 2, I think is optimal. I don't remember the specific numbers, but I think that's, if anyone remembers, please.
Yeah, the 2 pizza rule, right? Something like that, depending on how much they eat.
Yeah, that sort of depends on like how much you like pizza. So. But I think 8 to 12 is probably optimal. At 15, you need a really good leader. Beyond that, probably a bad deal.
We've been creating this panel about, managers and team and ICs basically collaborating. And how do you balance the individual talents and interests of people with the need to keep them from floating too far away, from having their successes float too far away from that of the team, from that of the people who have to pay the bills?
That's a good question. So what happens when the team's goal and the individual interests don't align, if I understand correctly, or no?
Or not immediately align. Yeah, how do you bring those two things together?
That's the fundamental question of leadership, right? Is how do you motivate people? And it's a deep question, and I don't think I can answer it. Like there are books about it. In my experience, we say we care a lot about the tech. We care a lot about the people. I think in good teams, people would work on the stuff that they're not super interested in, just to be able to work with these people in this context. Not always, but often.
Does it ever work the other way around? Do you ever, as a manager, find that somebody is super interested or super good at something and find a way to make that valuable for the team?
Of course. But you know what? If they're actually interested, and if the team is working as a team, it won't come from me. They don't need the manager when that happens. That person would come in and say, hey, I have this thing that I know how to do, and here's how I think, the team can use it. And of course, in our one-on-ones when we talk, and sometimes I would give that idea of like, hey, this thing that, I also think that personal development doesn't have to align exactly with what the team does, because everything you learn is valuable. So I would know about their interests. And sometimes I would say, hey, this thing that you're interested in, hey, did you think about asking the team, maybe you can help out in this or that way?
I think that's really important. I think that people who are other can be shy. And having someone say, you can connect this, that's what a lot of our panel will be about. You can connect these two things, and that will make this more sustainable. You need to almost be invited to start talking about what feels like outside and invited to find a way to bring it in.
That's a great point. And to me, it's a great benchmark for the team, right? Like, there's a sentence that I learned at AMD, I'm sure they use it, bring your whole self to work. And I think this is a really great benchmark for a team. Are people bringing their whole selves for the team or into the team? And if they're not, why? And this goes into facilitation, and this goes into like what communication style we want to establish in the team. And yeah, it's what managers do.
That sentence, after I would say 20 hours of interviews, because our panelists had different iterations of different people, is the best statement that I've ever heard. And as somebody who coaches people, both my age and younger, I'm going to repeat that over and over and over. It's encouraging people to bring their whole self to work and showing them how what they do well can be welcome, as opposed to what they're not doing.
I am taking no credit for it, but I think it's a beautiful sentence. I haven't worked there in years, and I still remember it because I feel like it really touches on something profound.
I'm hoping that you'll come to the panel because I think you have a lot to offer, and give us a hard time, because it's going to be a discussion with the audience.
I appreciate that. All right. Thanks again, everyone.